So today we've got Haysborough Lighthouse. So here's the photograph. I'll pop that up on screen so you can take a screenshot of that if you want to. And then this is my drawing. Again, I'll pop that up on screen so you can take a screenshot of that if you want to have a closer look at that. I'll go through the colours as I go along. It's a nice simple one today. So I'm going to start by wetting the sky. And we're going to come around the little houses and lighthouse if we can. You can come over the chimneys of the houses because they're darker. Get a nice layer of water on, taking our time to make sure that we cover all the paper. Okay, so I'm going to pick up my round number 10, make sure it's nice and clean, it's loaded with water, and I'm going straight into some cobalt blue. So load again with water, dab in straight into cobalt blue. As you come towards the clouds, you want to do a little circular motion. You can leave these areas that can be nice and cloudy. You want to take some care coming around the edge of your lighthouse. So I'm using my round number 10. You could drop down if you wanted to. Drop down to a number 6. I might do that in a minute anyway. It's nice blue sky. Just rinse that out and I'll drop down to a number 6 just so I can get round and get a really nice line. So I've just dipped into some water and then into the blue. If you can see the tip of your brush, you'll get a nice edge. I want to concentrate on getting a nice edge around the lighthouse. Over those roofs. I've come over the trees. Pop those in a second. Just taking some time to make sure I've got a nice edge. That it makes a big difference on this lighthouse because some of it's white. It's going to become the edge, this blue, the edge of the lighthouse. So you need to make sure that it's fairly even. Okay, so I'm only using 3 colours today and I've got a little bit of cadmium red deep here. So I've dabbed my brush into some water and then dabbed very lightly into the cadmium red deep. I just want to take a little bit in towards the top. It's just going to give it a bit of variety in that sky. But it got a nice sort of cloudy effect. This is a cloud effect paper. Just dampen that edge there. So it tends to do quite effective clouds. If you wanted to lift out any harder clouds, then you can get some kitchen towel, roll it into a little ball, and you can just dab to lift out some harder edges. This works best if it's not dry. You'll just start to lift a few little bits. So if you've gone a bit too dark, this is a great way to lift a little bit back out. When you are dabbing, you keep alternating the bit of tissue you're using, and I want you to twist just like when we do sponging, so that you're not getting the same pattern appearing all the time. It's never quite as white as the white of the paper when you lift back out. So this is why it's always important to leave a little bit of the white paper showing. And then you get a really nice effect. You're getting that blend of both. You can also do this with a cotton bud if you want littler clouds. So just twist and then dab. Get a really, really nice effective sky. And a little bit comes either side of the lighthouse, so we'll just take a little bit out there. Take a little bit further up there. Okay, what I'm also going to do is take my number 6. I'm going to take it into the little bit of the gamboge yellow. So there's a tiny bit of water on here. I want this to be fairly thick. A little bit of the blue, and I'm going to make a darker green. A little bit more blue. Then I'm going to take a tiny touch of the red across, just bit by bit. Tiny touch. I just want to knock this green back a little bit, and the red's going to do that, make it look more natural. But if you take too much, you'll just end up with a brown, so you've got to do it tiny bit by tiny bit. I'm taking a tiny bit on my brush. Okay, so this is quite a natural looking green now, and this is still quite wet. I'm going to come in and pop on these very distant trees around the cottages. Really nice and effective because it's going into wet, so it's going to be nice and soft. And I'm just dabbing in with my number 6. I'm taking it a bit further than it needs to go, really, just because it looks more effective. Okay, so I'll dry that one off. Okay, so that's nicely dry now. The colour in the green has really split out and it looks really lovely. Got like a golden tone where the gamboge is lifted forwards. I'm going to come on now and do the bottom section. I just wanted to say that if you haven't got this cloud paper, it doesn't matter. You can use any watercolour cotton paper, it will work just as well. So I'm wetting the bottom around number 10, and I'm going to go into that same green mix that we've used for the trees. So that was the gamboge yellow with the cobalt blue and a tiny touch of the cadmium red deep. So I'm just going to make up a little bit more. I've run out. It's good practice to keep mixing your colours up. I just basically want a base on to start with. So full base of the green. Right to the edge of the paper, following the line of the land, those strokes. And take some more of the yellow, a little bit of the blue. So this is a bit fresher because it's not got the red in. So you can see that it's a slightly different tone. So it's just giving a little bit of a fresher layer over there as well. You're going to come right the way to the top, right to the houses, right to the line of the sky, so you haven't got those white bits showing. But I don't want you to take this all the way through. You're going to leave little patches of the darker one underneath. So you've got tones starting to appear now. If I take a little bit more blue in to that mix, I'll make it darker again, and then I can sweep through again. And again, I'm following the line of the land, sweeping horizontally. You can see that that tone is building up now. Take a little bit more blue into the mix, just a dab more water. Get nice and strong, this bottom section. So if I twizzle myself around so that I'm now upside down, I'm going to pick up a rigger. A rigger or a line router is good for this because I'm going to pop in some grassy bits towards the front. So I'm just making sure I've got plenty of this green, the slightly darker green, so you want a little bit more blue in it. And then I can just pull that rigger vertically and I can start to create these grasses. Now it's still wet, so I'm going to do 2 layers of this. This is to really build it up. This is to start it, and you'll get those strokes appearing. And then when that's dry, we're going to go back in and create a little bit more detail. This is just to get that foreground detail. You want to make sure that you're doing different lengths, different heights, different angles. This is not mode, it is natural. So those few different heights make all the difference. And even though it's still wet, you can see that vertical line starting to appear. So I'll twizzle that back round. I'm going to dry that off now. Okay, so that's nicely dry. And what I'm going to do now is come in with the cadmium red deep, a little bit of water. So this is my round number 6. I'm going to wet each of these red stripes. Just dab off my brush. I'm going to dip into the cadmium red deep and I'm going to apply this. Now if you find this is tricky, you can swap down to a smaller brush. What you should find is this will start to flow in the wet. If you can see the tip of your brush, then you know where you're applying your colour. So if you're finding it tricky, so that top line, I can see the tip of my brush there. I can see the tip of my brush on that one. If I can't see the tip of my brush on the bottom line, I turn the page upside down and I can see the tip of my brush again. So it's all about making sure you can see that tip of your brush. Now at this stage I just want you to get a layer of colour on. It will flow round because you're going into the wet. That's absolutely fine. You see the tip of my brush. I need a nice sharp edge there. So I'm turning it so I can see the tip of my brush all the time. Makes a huge difference. I've also got a tiny bit of red at the top. Now if you haven't got cadmium red deep, you could use Scarlet Lake, could use vermilion, just whatever you've got. Windsor red. There's lots of different reds. So what I'm doing now is I'm adding more red. I've got a light side and a dark side. The dark side is to the left. So to make it look more bold, I'm adding more red, and that's all you need to do to make that shadow appear. Okay, so I need to make a little bit of a grey now. So I'm going to take a dab of red, a dab of blue into that red, and a tiny bit of yellow. That will go brown. If it goes brown, you add in more blue to make a grey. So if I just get this piece of paper, you'll see here, so you've got a grey. So it's primarily blue, a tiny dab of yellow and a tiny dab of red. And we've made a lovely grey. So we're going to go straight on to dry, onto these roofs. Again, see the tip of your brush, you know where you're painting. You've got 2 grey roofs to do here. And then you've got 3 chimneys. 2 windows, dab, dab. Doesn't need to be any more precise than this, it's in the distance. Dab, dab. Little bit of grey something here, so we'll add a bit of grey there. Now if I dab some of that off and put water on my brush, just dab that into the palette, what I've now got is a watery grey. That watery grey can then be used to make some shadow. So on this side of the house we're going to have a little bit of shadow, a little bit under here as well, and then down each of these white sides I'm just going to take a little bit of shadow. Now I'm being very careful not to touch into the red. If you want to dry first you can do that, and then it will stop it running anywhere near your red running into your grey. You're just making that shadow pretty even down there. Okay, so I'll just finish drying that off. Okay, so that's nicely dry. I'm going to go back into that thicker grey now. I'm going to pop in a little line there. I'm going to pop in a little window there. And something of a little window there. And a very, in fact I'm going to twizzle this way, fine dark edge all the way along there. That's just so I could see the tip of my brush and I can get that dark edge really well that way. So if I turn myself back upside down now, I'm going to make a little bit more of that green, so that's the yellow and the blue, so we're having a nice fresh green, and we're going to pick up my rigger again, so that's my long thin brush, rest on my little finger, and I just want to pop lots of these grasses in. Now if they do not show, take a little bit more blue in. it should be a little bit of a darker mix, and you should see that over. Can you see how I'm just varying the pressure on the brush, varying the angle? I just find it easier to paint downwards to a point, which is why I turn this way. If you find it easier to paint upwards to a point, then you can leave it the right way round. So I'm just varying. The pressure on the brush, the angle. Just be careful you don't lean onto your wet lighthouse still. You can crisscross a few. Just keep dipping back into the paint. Your brush wants to stay nicely loaded. So that it don't become scratchy. Okay, so if I twist this back round now, and with my round number 6, I'm just going to randomly dab. So I'm going left, right, I'm creating little bits of foliage, dotting around and keeping them quite vertical. Just adding another dimension to this foreground. Everything that we do now in the foreground is going to give the picture a sense of distance. I'm going to take these a little bit higher here so it sweeps down, and it's sort of following that sweep there, so it makes a nice composition. Just a few random dabs. Okay, so there we go, all finished. Haysborough Lighthouse.